Colerain Township Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for Wednesday, December 19th, 2018. I'd like to begin this meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance, so if we'd please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to begin the meeting with a brief explanation of how the meeting will proceed. There are two components to the meeting this evening. The first will be a listing of the primary functions of the board, and the second will be the sequence of activities for the meeting. Primary functions of the Board of Zoning Appeals are to hear appeals from the administrative interpretation of the zoning code, such as the administrative denial of a zoning permit, hear requests for variances, hearing requests for conditional uses, and finally, hearing requests for expansion or changes to a non-conforming use or building. So the sequence of events tonight, the staff will present an overview of each case. The presentation will include photos, diagrams, and other materials pertinent to the case. They will also make a recommendation to the board as to the disposition. The chairman will next open the hearing to the appellant to present his or her case. Following this, anyone who is opposed to the appeal will be allowed to speak. After comments for and against the appeal have been heard, the chairman will close the public comment component, and each board member will then address questions to the appellant, staff, and as appropriate, those opposed. After questions have been answered to the satisfaction of the board, the chairman will ask for a motion to approve or deny the request. The vote is the final action of the board. Housekeeping. For the public, please make all comments from the podium. All testimony is transcribed. It is important the transcriber hear your testimony correctly. And the nature of the BZA is quasi-judicial, and respect for and by every participant is paramount. The chairman reserves the right to excuse from the hearing anyone displaying disruptive behavior. We will go next to a roll call.
Ms. Wilson?
Present.
Mr. Bartold?
Here.
Mr. Roberta?
Present.
Mr. Reiniger?
Here. We have the ability to seat one alternate pending the permanent appointment of another board member. This month we will seat Mr. Hill. Last month we sat Mr. Schwab. So if Mr. Hill would join us, I'd appreciate that. The next order of business is swearing in of anyone who wishes to provide testimony. So if you would, please, anyone who wishes to provide testimony, I need you to stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before the Board of Zoning Appeals? Please say, I do. I do. Thank you. The first case is BZA 2018-017. It's a request for a conditional use permit and variance requests for student drop-off and parking arrangements. The location is 4850 Pool Road. The applicant/owner is a Kleinger's Group and Northwest Local School District. And we'll begin with the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you noted, the request before you this evening is for improvements to the student drop-off, parking arrangements, and playground location for the Colerain Elementary School. This request does include the request for 3 variances with respect to parking, playground setbacks, and parking islands and plantings. The site is currently zoned as R4 suburban medium residential. The overall site is 19 acres, which includes the elementary school, which has been on location since 1923, as well as the middle school facility just to the south that has been there since about 1965. School is conditionally permitted in this zoning district, subject to Section 745 of the zoning resolution. A couple aerial images here. This is looking into the site. On the right of the image there is Pool Road, and across the bottom is Springdale Road. So if I have my directions correct, we're looking south here, and you can see the original playground in the foreground of that on the closer side of the elementary school there. I do want to note that the school district did, in an effort to get things ready for this school year, have already relocated that playground to the other side of the building, and this actually eliminates some nonconformities in the process. So they were working very, very hard to get some improvements to the facility up and running before the school year started, so that's why they don't yet have their zoning approval, but they are coming to you tonight to make sure that we go through that process and have your approval for the variances that they would need to relocate this playground. If you're familiar with the site, the playground sits very close, used to sit very close to Springdale Road there. You can see it again. This is then looking northwest, or west, I should say. On the closer side of the building is where the new playground is currently located. This gives you a good idea of what was existing and kind of the dangerous situation that the school district is attempting to correct with their application. You see that they actually lined the parking. And I don't know this for certain, but it's almost as if they've asked their faculty to park along this right-of-way to create more of a barrier from the students on the playground. They'll be able to speak to that more clearly, but you can see that aside from a chain link fence, there is no real barrier from the roadway for those children that are out on the playground. So this parking is an issue. Was an issue, I should say, because the faculty were backing directly out onto Springdale Road. It's kind of one continuous curb cut there. An aerial image here to give you an idea of what we're going to start looking at in plan view. This was existing before the start of the school year, a little closer there. And then if you can see the proposed drawing here, a little closer. The playground has been relocated to the right side of this image here. This request includes a new parking lot and bus drop-off area along the school. With these changes, the applicant does plan to include the required 15-foot streetscape buffer, which will include 6 street trees with landscaping, and they will be continuing the sidewalk, which currently ends at essentially the front of the school, which is right at the intersection of Pool and Springdale Road. So they will be adding that sidewalk along Springdale Road, which is, if you're familiar with what we've got going on with our sidewalks at this point in time with new proposed sidewalks, this is a priority area. This is a pretty significant priority area for sidewalks. So very timely for the school to be making some improvements on this site and might really add to some other projects that we've got going on, which are essentially going to link all the way down from Colerain High School all the way up to Stone Creek Town Center. So this is a big piece of that connection there. The proposal eliminates the non-conforming parking along Springdale Road that necessitated backing into parking spaces directly from the roadway. The zoning requirements include section 745 that parking and all activities need to be 50 feet from property lines. At this point in time and for a very long time, the pavement actually runs all the way to the property line, so it is non-conforming. The applicant is proposing to continue this non-conformity with a different use, basically that playground moving over to the other side of the building. The other variance that's being requested has to do with the landscape islands, which are required at the end of each row. Those islands are to include 2 trees and 6 shrubs. They are requesting a variance from this due to maintenance need and snow removal. This should look somewhat familiar to you. About 2 years ago, when you heard the conditional use approvals for the 3 new elementary schools that were constructed this past year, they all included requests for removal of those parking islands in some of their lots around the schools. And a lot of that has to do with the bus parking, which you can see. It's kind of difficult to see from these pictures, but this is on Springdale Road. You can see that they did pave the parking lot so that they could utilize it until they were able to get the approvals from this board for the changes. But you can see it's still one continuous curb cut, but the buses are lined up back against the school there. You can see it a little better there. So the proposal is to continue to allow for that bus traffic to move through there. Staff finds that the use is a conditional use permitted with approval by the BZA in the district where the subject lot is located. Use is in accordance with the objectives of the White Oak character area in the Colerain Township Comprehensive Plan. The conditional use will not substantially or permanently injure the appropriate use of neighboring properties if approved with reasonable restrictions to mitigate the more intensive use of the property, including noise, outdoor lighting, and parking. Otherwise, the use will serve the public convenience and welfare, and the use will not create extensive requirements at public cost for public facilities and services, and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. Staff is recommending approval of the conditional use with the following 3 variances from Section 7, 4, 5, A, and C to allow parking and playground facilities within 50 feet of the property lines. Second, a variance from Section 14.6.2A to eliminate the requirement for landscape islands at the end of the rows of proposed parking. And third, a variance from Section 14.6.3A to eliminate the requirement for 2 trees and 6 shrubs in the landscape islands. That is staff's presentation at this time. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Thank you. Is the appellant here tonight? And would they care to talk to the board?
Yes, thank you. My name is Steve Cordy with the Kleinger's Group. I have with me Chris McKee with Northwest Schools. Thank you to Jenna for presenting. You did a very good job as usual. I would say, just to reiterate a couple things, the driver behind this project was safety. The school district had a playground that was very close to Springdale Road, fairly busy road. There were concerns with not just cars, perhaps, as Jenna mentioned, we parked cars along Springdale Road, staff parked there. There were concerns with cars perhaps getting into the playground area. And also, the reality was school shootings and the proximity of the playground to the road. The school district wanted to get it farther away from the road. So by moving it around to the side of the building, we feel we've improved safety for the kids. Secondly, from safety perspective, the cars parked on Springdale Road, it's been that way probably for 50, 60, 70 years. It's not safe, cars pulling in, backing out on the Springdale Road. So in the end, from the photograph that Jenna shared, in the end, the parking along Springdale Road, it'll end up being a grass island, and we're eliminating effectively probably a 300-foot long curb cut down to a reasonable width curb cut, and we'll also be installing a sidewalk along the frontage as well. From the tree perspective, we will be planting 6 trees in the strip of green between the parking lot and the wall to kind of dress up the frontage as well. So we feel this is a win-win from a safety perspective for both the students and the traveling public, and of course staff that was parking along Springdale Road. So I think that sums it up fairly well. Chris, do you have anything?
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone to speak against this? Seeing that there's no other members of the public to approach the board, I will ask for a motion to close the public part of this hearing.
Mr. Reininger, I don't believe that you opened the public hearing, so you may want to open the public hearing, then ask again, and then close the public hearing.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Okay, well, we got to open the public hearing, and we've already heard from the applicant. And anyone else?
I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing.
Okay.
Seconded.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're not going to do a roll call on that. All right, now, now we're back in order. Thank you.
Now you need to close the public hearing.
Now we'll close the public hearing. If there's anyone else.
I make a motion, we close the public.
Thank you. Second? Motion is made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we're back on track. We will begin with questions from the board. So, Mr. Hill?
No questions.
Mr. Roberto?
I just had a question on the trees that are going to be planted along this frontage. Are they going to interfere with the power lines?
We will certainly work to plant a tree that's more ornamental, that will not grow, because Duke does have requirements, but we will meet the requirements. We have not submitted yet to the county engineer to get approval, so we have a little leeway with where we can put the trees, but we don't want to put anything that will interfere or grow into the power lines, so.
And then I guess the other question I have, I'm just trying to follow the drawing here, is how are the buses coming in and to that? It looks,
Can you pull up the site plan, please? So the buses will come in from again, the reduced width curb cut kind of at the top of the screen there. They'll loop in through the parking lot and drop off along that striped walkway there, if you will.
Oh, sorry, my,
Yeah.
coming from there, it looks like.
they're coming in, right here? Okay. Coming in this way, circling around that way.
Because I'm just trying to get my head around how in the world they're getting into that space the way you got it drawn. So all right, I mean, you're going to allow the curb cut to allow them to turn from the right going in there, because right now they're turning at a 90-degree angle. There's no way they're going to do that. I mean, am I reading that incorrectly?
They'll be turning right into the lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's actually fairly deceiving. That aisle is very wide there. It's probably 47 feet wide. So, I mean, they're effectively doing it now, currently, so there are no issues.
But you've got barriers in there, so that's why I'm just trying to, the drawing just doesn't paint the perfect picture for me. So right here where number 4 is where I'm assuming they're coming in?
Correct.
Okay.
So there'll be it's somewhat hard to see, but there will be a grass island in between the curb cuts.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Okay, Ms. Wilson?
No questions.
Mr. Porto?
Kind of just on that same flavor, you've had this up and running for a month or two?
Since the beginning of school.
Yeah, so I mean, you've had a time to iron out the problems. Have you had any problems, or is it working?
No, it's actually working very well.
Okay, I was just curious if you were going to make any changes or what. Other than that, no questions.
I appreciate the fact you're putting trees along there. And tell me why you can't put the bushes in if you're putting trees in.
Well, I mean, we technically could, but we're trying to, and with the islands in the inside, internal to the parking lot, it's been a paved for 60, 70 years. We'd really rather not open up, cut the asphalt. It just lets water into your subbase,
Sure.
and it starts to unravel. It's the life of the pavement. It impacts the life of the pavement. So we would prefer not to cut, and it's recently been seal coated. We'd rather not cut open freshly, restored pavement and deal with the issues that come along with that.
Then I just need to be clarified. So the trees are going to be planted in the ground, so you're going to be going through the pavement anyway.
The trees will be along the frontage as shown in that image there, basically
Sure.
between the parking lot and Springdale Road. They'll be in a strip of green there, a strip of grass.
So you're actually taking out some pavement because that's all paved now.
Correct. Yeah, we'll be taking out effectively, I don't know, probably 30 or 40 foot of pavement width, replacing it with a walk down the middle. There'll be green on both sides.
Oh,
Is
okay.
that where you were referencing the shrubs to be, though?
Well, the shrubs are only for the islands, or are they for between the trees?
That's what I'm verifying right now. When it comes to the streetscape buffer, so the 15 feet, we're talking only about canopy trees
There's no way they're going to be canopy trees.
or ornamental. Ornamental can be substituted at a ratio of 1 per 25 lineal feet of street frontage.
And
So
I think
we can work with them to make sure that they're meeting that.
I think
but
what
the-
Mr. Reininger was looking to do was fill in more of the gaps with some shrubs in between the trees.
So the requirement, though, for shrubs are only within those landscape islands
Okay.
that they are requesting a variance from. So the variance is for the island itself as well as for the trees and shrubs inside those islands.
Okay, so the shrubs are actually part of the island component as opposed to, all right, thank you.
Can I ask a question of staff? I mean, if we grant this variance, can we ask that the shrubs that were going to be in the island put in along the streetscape?
You could condition it that way.
It's going to be in a green space, trees are in a green space, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How are you protecting the trees from getting run over?
We're not. They're just going to be in a little tree lawn strip, so.
Okay. Is there anything prohibiting you from putting shrubs between the trees? It's in a green space
Certainly
already.
physically possible. I mean, there is I know you often don't like to hear this, there is an economic component, but there is room to squeeze them in between the trees.
Yeah, but we're eliminating an economic component by not having to dig a parking lot up and put an island in, so I mean,
Sure.
it's a give and take.
Okay, I have no other questions. At this point, we can ask for a motion to approve this variance and in any configuration.
I would like to make a motion to approve the request for this variance with the condition that we include shrubbery in between the trees along the streetscape.
Okay, motion's been made.
All the other staff recommendations would be included.
At
Is there-
what amount?
Yeah.
If you would specify the
How many
amount.
bushes were required to be in our island?
6 shrubs,
6 for each, was it 6 for each,
2 trees and 6 shrubs in the landscape.
in each island?
Okay, then we were having 2 islands.
I believe so.
So you've got 1,
12.
2, 3, 4, 5 trees, right? I think 2 shrubs in between each tree.
3, 6, 9, or 3, 6, 9, 12. Right?
I was trying to keep it within the same economics.
If that, I mean.
I would recommend 2 if someone on the board has a better recommendation, that's,
Or to go with a landscaper's recommendation in terms of spacing and type of
right.
flora.
I'm.
How about
okay.
we put a minimum in there?
Minimum of 2,
Can I get a second, and then you have discussion?
Okay,
yes. So here's one, I'll go back
I
and
wanna make
restate
sure,
it, just so we got it.
so the recommendation is, or the motion is to approve with a minimum of 2 shrubs
Or in between each
in
tree.
between each, okay, I'll second that.
all right, thank you. Now we can have discussion.
Thank you.
In terms of anything else to be said in terms, okay.
Good with the,
If there's not, then we will ask for a roll call vote to approve the variance with trees and a minimum of 2 shrubs between each tree.
As well as the
Setback variances,
the
conditional
recommendations that staff.
staff, yes.
Yep.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Bartold?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
yes.
Mr. Roberta?
Yes.
Mr. Reiniger?
Aye. Very good. That is approved. And now we're going to move to BZA 2018-018, and it's a request for conditional use permit and variance request for student drop-off and parking arrangements. And this one is at 8791 Cheviot Road. The applicant owner is a Kleingers Group, and it's Northwest School District. And staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Reiniger. Make sure I get to the right spot here. So the request is actually somewhat similar to the one you just heard, though a little more simple, I believe. The request is for improvement to student drop-off and parking arrangements, along with 2 variance requests. These include shrubs and parking islands at Colerain High School, which is in a location that is currently zoned as R5. It is 27 acres, and the high school has been in this location since 1964. The use is conditionally permitted, again, subject to Section 745 of the Colerain Township zoning resolution. The property is entirely surrounded by residential as well as a church. Much of the parking layout and landscaping are non-conforming. They're non-conforming with the current regulations, given that this was developed in the 60s. This is an aerial image looking from Cheviot Road, so looking across the site, you're looking at the front of the school there and their large parking lot. And then from behind the school, this is essentially hovering over Pool Road and the rear entrance to the high school. There are 3 areas that we're going to discuss for this case. I'm going to start in the top left corner there. But all 2 of these areas we're talking about current traffic flow and the installation of gates and islands. And then in this top left corner, we're going to be talking about the addition of some parking spaces as well as some landscaping. The current traffic flow is poor and it regularly backs up. I should say the previous traffic flow, again, this is the school district put some changes into place prior to the start of the school year. It's my understanding that they're working pretty well. And for the most part, they're moving closer to compliance on a couple of things. So they're back here now asking for your approvals for the 2 variances that they will need for this. Let's see. They are looking to eliminate many of the conflict points between pedestrians and automobiles in both the front and back of the school. And they're working with the installation of gates to do that. This created a minor reduction in parking, and so they relocated some of this parking to that northwest side of the site, which is where we're going to start here. I believe this is reconfiguration. This totals 60 spaces, not counting those couple that are right along the building there. Some of these were in existence, but they've added a few here. They've also added a dumpster with enclosure back there, and a new sidewalk that runs east-west along the northern side of the second building on the property. They have already installed 13 trees. They planted these along the edge of the new parking area near the tennis courts, and then also a little bit of buffering from the football field down below. The variance request is from the shrub requirement, the island and shrub requirements for those for the new parking area. There are 2 stretches along here that you can see the doubled up parking here of 19 spaces and then 23 spaces without an island. Typically, every 15 spaces we require an island with the tree and shrubs. So that is what the request is for this evening in the northwest kind of corner of the site. Here's an image. It's difficult to see. They are freshly planted trees, but I can tell you, I did not get out and measure them, but they appear to be the 2.5 caliper that is required. Often what we will see when developments come in is they're actually 1.5. They say they're 2.5, they're actually 1.5. These actually looked like they were complying with what our requirement is, so I was happy to see that. And then looking across where they are requesting the variance from the landscape islands there. The other 2 things that they have done is some pedestrian kind of traffic control, if you will, and then added some new islands for the cars to move through the front lot in a more efficient manner. Without those islands at the bottom right of the screen there, you had cars that were kind of just cutting all the way across the parking lot in an uncontrolled fashion. So they've added islands there, and they did add a landscape tree in each one of those. So we were happy to see that. The rest of that lot is still non-conforming. And then the restriped areas, they've done this in both the front and back of the school. On the right of the screen there is the front of the school, where they've added gates down the middle that they close during peak times so that cars cannot move through there, and the students have the ability to safely cross without major conflict points with that traffic. The same goes for the back of school there between the two buildings. When I pulled up, the gates were actually closed. There are the islands in the front of the school in that lot. Closer look at that plan, but then this is very difficult to see, but the gates are closed here. This is in the back of the school. I don't know if you can see that very well. Let me see if I can get my pointer here. These are actually closed, but right in through here. So there's gates here blocking both sides of a crosswalk, and then there are gates just on the other side of this parking as well, and then kind of that same setup in the front of school as well. So the students have kind of that safe ability to just cross right through. And again, this is then the layout for the back of the school. Staff finds that the use is a conditional use permitted and approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals in the district where the subject lot is located. The use is in accordance with the objectives of the White Oak Character Area in the Colerain Township Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Resolution. The conditional use will not substantially and/or permanently injure the appropriate use of neighboring properties if approved with reasonable restrictions to mitigate the more intensive use of the property, including noise, outdoor lighting, and parking. Otherwise, the use will serve the public convenience and welfare. The use will not create excessive requirements at public cost for public facilities and services and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. Staff is recommending approval of the conditional use with the following two variances. First, from section 1463A to waive the 6 shrubs per 15 parking space requirement in the newly constructed islands. And 2, variance from section 1462B to exceed the 15-space parking regulations without interior islands on the newly reconfigured parking in the northwest corner of the site. Staff would be happy to answer any questions of the board at this time.
Thank you. At this point, are there any questions for staff? We'll go back to the applicant and
We need a motion to open.
No, this is.
This is still the applicant part.
Hello again, my name is Steve Cordy with the Kleinger's Group, and again, Chris McKee with Northwest Schools with me. Thank you again, Jenna, for presenting. Again, the driver behind this was safety. We met with the school district back in spring, early summer. We at Kleinger's, we do a lot of school sites, and I'd say the dynamic of schools and vehicles has changed a lot in the last 20 years. There's no longer busing. There's no busing to the high school. There are a few transfer buses, a couple, 2 or 3, but they don't bus kids there. So there are a lot more parents that drop their kids off. So we actually sent I observed the traffic one morning, but it's kind of hard to see. It's a very active site, of course, in the mornings and the afternoons. So we actually sent drones up. We got video to see a typical arrival and dismissal, and their concerns were 100% legitimate. The lower lot in front of the high school is the student lot, and all the students are walking in to the front door, if you will, on the east side of the building, and there are a lot of pedestrian vehicular conflicts. There's a lot of apparent near misses per what the school had conveyed to us. So the idea was to put the gates in front. So again, on the east side of the high school, we have it gated off. So in the mornings at arrival and dismissal, it's gated off. So there's no north-south traffic going in front of the school. So basically, we're giving the right-of-way to the pedestrian, to the students to walk into the building. So, and again, this work was done in the summer. We believe this was more of a type of internal operational thing. So it was installed, and we understand it's working very, very well. Similarly, in the rear between the high school and the career center, we put the gates in there again to give the right-of-way to pedestrians walking between the buildings. And there's a lot more pedestrian traffic between the buildings than I realized. So again, it's working very well. Our intent was to give a lot of drop-off area along curbs. So to the north of the career center, can you go back to the previous site plan or showing the career center? Yes. So we added a walk along the north side of the building, along that where it's labeled parent drop, to give more room for parents to drop off along curbs. Parents were dropping off all over the place out here, very, very unsafe. It really was a free-for-all. Kids just cutting across, very unsafe. So we wanted to, again, eliminate those conflicts in between the buildings and in front of the high school, but we also wanted to give some more linear footage of curb to drop off. So we kind of created this flow as shown on this diagram to accomplish that. We understand it's working very, very well, so we're very happy with the results. We're planning the number of trees required. We're requesting a variance for the islands in the middle. We would prefer not to cut open pavement and introduce water into the subgrade. But we did plant some trees in the islands out in front on the east side of the high school, as Jenna mentioned. So that lower lot, the student lot, it was really dangerous free for all. I can't say that enough, with students exiting in the afternoon at dismissal. So it kind of channels them in, the islands that we put in, and we put trees in to kind of dress it up a little. So we feel, again, in conclusion, it's a really big improvement to safety on the site. Thank you very much.
Chris McKee with the Northwest Local School District. One of the other things I wanted to make clear is that when we were looking at doing this, we also took in mind the fire department. So we did meet with Captain Walsh, had them come over. They actually brought a fire truck over so that we could check the spacing of the bollards and the gates to make sure that they could get their vehicles through with no problems. So I just want to make sure that you do that.
Good. Thank you. Anyone else speak?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to open the public hearing, and all in favor?
Aye.
All right, now, is there anyone to speak in favor or opposed?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Seconded. Seconded.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, questions from the board. Mr. Roberto?
I just had a question for the gate system. So, can you explain to me how this works? Because I actually haven't seen it.
Sure.
Is there a barrier in the?
Could you come to the podium? I'm sorry. It's just.
So we
Is there a
installed-
barrier in the middle of there?
We installed bollards like 6 feet on center. So I'll start. Do you have a zoom in one of those areas that you can? There you go. So there's an aisle on each side of the parking there. So there are actually 4 gates there. It's labeled number 7, I believe, there.
Okay.
So there are 4 gates, and in between there are bollards painted Colerain red every 6 feet. So it effectively, when the gates are closed, it's a barrier. No one can get through. The gates can be open. Again, thank you, Chris, for reminding regarding the fire department access. That was important to us for them to come out to verify they could turn a truck around. So when the gates are opened, they open parallel to the flow of traffic. So during outside of school hours, you can still drive through. But when they're closed, there's the arrows kind of show the traffic flow. There's a kind of, you do a 180, you do a U-turn there, if you will, from one side to the other on the north and south side of that pedestrian walkway. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I guess my question is that at that time, why wouldn't we have put an island to the right and left of that, or in the center of those where the gates are, where you get the bollards in the middle, I guess? Why didn't we install some islands at that time? Right? I mean, because that's essentially what we're trying to do on the main parking lot. We'd be doing the same thing here.
If I understand you correctly, I mean, the pedestrians walk through the crosshatched area, so we needed to be able to open the gates for emergency fire access, so we couldn't have a raised island there. It would have conflicted.
I can come up here at that point. So. Your gates does this?
Yes.
So why wouldn't we have an island in there and an island in there?
So, Mr. Roberto, just to clarify, this portion of the plan is essentially restriping. If they were to just restripe their parking lot, we would not require them to come into conformance with the landscape regulations in those islands. So just kind of a point of clarification that they're trying to help us understand why they added the other traffic islands and what was going on in the back of the property. This was just part of their project, but as far as staff saw this was essentially just a restriping.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Ms. Wilson.
Okay, so Ms. LeCount, you're saying that this isn't a variance because they're repaving or anything like that?
There's no variance request in this,
Okay.
or in the crosswalk essentially between the career center and the main building.
Essentially, it's the back lot and the front lot, the new
Yes.
addition. And
Yes.
So I guess my question is more so about the 23 parking spaces. That is a variance though, right?
The one in the back.
Let me,
In the back.
let me get this, let me get the slide so I can make sure that we're talking about the same thing. What we're talking about here is a variance request because we have more than 15 spaces with a landscape island. What they've done is they've taken the trees that would have been in those landscape islands and they've put them around the lot. So the request is to not have to do the island itself. The other request is in the front here where they have included the 3 new islands. They've put a tree in there, but they'd like a variance from needing to do the shrubbery in there.
In the whole area or
Nope,
just between
nope,
the islands?
just
in
my
the-
pointer, just these 3 islands. Each island has a tree in the middle, but they have not included any shrubbery with that. So they're requesting a variance to not need to put the shrub in with that tree.
What's the state of the rest of that
This,
lot? No, where the new tree islands are, is that just plain
it's just
pavement?
non-conforming. So it is paved one side to the other.
Okay, and the only reason why I'm asking is because I just don't want to get into the business of consistently waiving the requirement for the greenery when there's more than 15 parking spaces.
Well, I will mention it to reiterate what Jenna said. I mean, the intent was just to seal coat this lot. We painted black and restriped it. And considering the concerns with traffic, we wanted to kind of channel the traffic. That's why we put the islands in there. We could have put bollards in, but we decided to put islands there, something a little more permanent.
I mean, I like the islands. I just wanted to make sure I understood what was going on with the restriping and making sure that, because there are a lot of parking spaces, it just seems like a lot of flat space.
So just to
But
clarify,
if it's
they had
just-
no requirement to put these
Right,
these
'cause
landscape
it's-
islands in. They
'cause
could
it's
have just
restriping.
paved, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Because they did it, they just did with shrubbery, so that's the variance in this case.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make that comment. And I don't know what you all are gonna do with that other side. It's just paved or whatnot, outside of, I guess, if you guys decide to restripe it or whatnot, but I just don't want it to be a habit of waiving these requirements for the shrubbery. So now that I have a better understanding, I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Hill?
No questions.
Mr. Bartold?
So the islands, like you say, are for channeling, so that a lot of cars just don't all start converging onto that driveway.
Correct. I
Okay.
mean, they're kids, they shoot a gap. They see a gap. and
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
A lot of cars lined up, and I can just cut through right over here. And
Yeah.
where they come down to that east-west drive, it was kind of a
Right.
free-for-all. So we're trying to keep them in line, literally.
And did we hear a reason why you don't want to put the shrubs in?
I figured you'd ask that question again. It's the same reasoning. I mean, we would rather not. In that island, we just didn't put them. We figured we'd throw a tree in there. We just didn't put them in. So they certainly could be added.
Or it would be a
and the other-
visual block, right? They'd be in the way visually, coming out.
Yeah, they're low.
If you keep them low enough, you can put them in there, frankly. In the other parking lot, we're asking for a variance. Again, we didn't want to cut the pavement up and
Well,
introduce
right.
water
Yeah,
into the
that's-
subgrade. So
Right.
same as the Colerain Elementary site.
Yeah, I was out there a couple months ago, and maybe because it was my first time, it was a little bit confusing, because you have to look for all these arrows. There's no signage, right? Like one-way, two-way? Not that that's part of this problem, but,
Well, you changed the traffic flow too, didn't you? Because it used to be a one-way and now it's.
That's a good point. Down to the east, where it kind of winds together over towards Cheviot Road, it used to be just one way. It was kind of one-way counterclockwise in general, but
yeah.
yeah. So it's shown there. It's kind of hard to see, but to the right of that image, we did restripe that. So that main east-west drive is two-way in and out. We kind of had to do that to access the southern portion of the lot in front of the building. So we had to convert that to two-way.
Right.
So we did stripe that, or adjust that island when we restriped it right in that general area to convert convert that east-west drive to two-way.
Yeah, I came in from Poole and headed up towards the building, and then I was like, is it still two-way or is it one-way?
On the northern?
I was on the, yeah.
Yeah.
But I figured if the parents are showing up, everybody's got it figured out.
People get used to it after a while. Obviously, the first week or two are always the most challenging, but I believe there is some signage saying one way out there when you enter coming from Cheviot Road.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, that's all.
Actually, the one question I had was, how strong is your directional signage? And you've kind of worked on that. Once you get used to it, obviously it isn't as important, but new people coming in, that is important. And I would wish to extend an appreciation for the fact you're putting in trees. I think that's, as long as they aren't Cleveland Select or Bartlett pear trees.
I don't believe that's the case, though.
Yeah,
I understand.
but, no, so those are, I had no other questions, but I will ask for a motion to approve conditional use and variances as presented.
I will make a motion to approve as it's been presented.
Second.
And motion made and seconded. Discussion? Okay, if there's no discussion, we'll have a roll call vote to approve the conditional use and variances.
Ms. Wilson? Mr. Bartol?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Yes.
Mr. Reiniger?
Aye. Thank you very much. It's been approved. We will then proceed on to the next item on our agenda, which is, let me get to my agenda. Unfinished business?
Yep.
None?
No, sir.
Okay. We have minutes from the 28th of November, and there is a correction that Mr. Roberto spotted on the minutes from the 28th, and that is the swearing in was not done by Mr. Roberto. The swearing in of the applicants was actually done by Mr. Reiniger.
Sorry about that. We will correct that.
Um,
Would you like to put these off until your next meeting, or do you,
I think we can.
You assume we can make that
Yeah,
change?
approve it.
Yeah.
all right.
Were there any other amendments to the minutes?
And I will make a motion to approve the minutes with the correction.
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call vote to approve the minutes from the 28th of November.
Ms. Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Bartol?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
I will abstain. I was absent.
Mr. Roberto?
Aye.
Mr. Reiniger?
Aye. Thank you. The next meeting is January 23rd, 2019.
The next meeting will be February 27th, 2019. We don't have anything on the agenda for your January meeting. We do have some new members to swear in. We will do that at your February meeting, and then I believe it's your organizational meeting as well, where you will have a vote for chair, vice chair, and secretary.
Okay,
And this board does have a secretary, right?
very good. Okay, thank you. Administrative matters? The only comment from the chair at this point is we wish everyone a joyous holiday, and take time to spend time with your family and friends, and enjoy the season.
Here, here, likewise. Holidays.
I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We stand adjourned.